A brash new officer confidently believed he might outfox a battle-hardened judge, but he was utterly mistaken. The courtroom pulsed with a subtle, expectant electricity, a silent promise softly whispering in the charged air moments before an unforgettable drama burst forth. It was an ordinary, sunlit Monday in Wilmington, Delaware's venerable courthouse, a realm where justice ambled gracefully at its own measured rhythm. Within neat rows, attentive spectators filled the benches, their faces a blend of boredom and intrigue as they awaited the next case. At the forefront, poised behind a gleaming, carved wooden bench sat Judge Regina Fowler, whose mere commanding aura naturally drew deep reverence without any need for clamor. With a wealth of legal acumen amassed over decades, her reputation was forged in fairness, steadfast resilience, and an incisive mind capable of unraveling the knottiest of arguments. People admired her not for booming declarations but for the gravity each word conveyed. The docket for the day appeared mundane: a minor public disturbance, a handful of property disputes, and a single case involving an off-duty officer, none of which promised headline-grabbing drama. Yet, as proceedings commenced, the courtroom doors creaked open sharply, heralding the entrance of Officer Dylan Kane. Newly graduated from the academy, his impeccably crisp uniform radiated sheer perfection, and each stride exuded an unmistakable swagger that defied subtlety. He halted to absorb the scene, his eyes briefly locking with the judge's. Judge Fowler merely offered a curt nod, her face an inscrutable mask. It wasn't her first encounter with a brash rookie striding in with a chip on his shoulder, nor would it be her last, yet something in Kane's overly self-assured manner set her nerves on edge. His walk was too defiant, his stare too confrontational for one so new. As the day's proceedings marched on, the atmosphere grew denser with tension. Eventually, Kane's name echoed through the halls, prompting him to stride forward, a barely perceptible smirk curving his lips. Instantly, the gallery stirred, acutely aware that a storm was imminent. The clerk recited the case particulars. Kane faced allegations of deploying disproportionate force during a standard arrest, despite the defendant sustaining only minor injuries. The episode, however, had stirred sufficient doubts to land before Judge Fowler. Flipping swiftly through the case files, she arched an eyebrow, her lips tightening into a delicate, unyielding line. "Officer Kane," she intoned in a firm yet measured tone, "this is a courtroom, not your training grounds. I fully expect you to exhibit the proper respect for these proceedings." Kane's smirk broadened, thinly veiled behind courteous words. "Of course, Your Honor, I would never dare deviate," yet his tone carried a biting edge, a covert barb that sharply resonated with everyone in the chamber, especially the judge. Yet the true spectacle was yet to ignite. The courtroom sank into a tense, brooding silence as Officer Kane took his place at the defendant's table. His hands rested nonchalantly, while his attorney, a middle-aged man etched with fatigue, murmured a few words into his ear, which Kane largely dismissed, his eyes locked defiantly on Judge Fowler. The judge spoke evenly and firmly. "Officer Kane, you are summoned to respond to claims of overzealous force during an arrest. The complete record comprises body cam footage, detailed witness accounts, and the victim's comprehensive medical report. Do you fully grasp the seriousness of this charge?" Kane inclined his head, the smirk reappearing as he stated, "With all due respect, Your Honor, it appears this is merely a grossly exaggerated misunderstanding. I've scrutinized the footage myself and remain convinced that I acted strictly within protocol." A murmur arose from the gallery as Judge Fowler struck her gavel, instantly silencing the room. Her eyes narrowed subtly, yet she remained composed. "This court will determine if your actions adhered to protocol, Officer Kane." Kane leaned in, his tone sharpening as he declared, "With respect, Your Honor, I recognize that my role sometimes demands rapid judgment and an unwavering hand, realities that those unversed in the field might fail to grasp." A palpable shock surged through the room, his haughty tone unmistakable. The gallery traded knowing glances, with murmurs threading through the silence. Judge Fowler's face stayed inscrutable, though her fingers clutched the gavel just a bit tighter. "Officer Kane," she declared in an even colder tone, "this is no forum for debate, it is a legal proceeding. I urge you to recalibrate your attitude immediately, for your behavior today will heavily influence the court's view of your credibility." For a brief instant, Kane paused, weighing whether to press further. Then, with a theatrical shrug, he sank back into his seat, his smirk dissolving into a mask of feigned nonchalance. "Understood, Your Honor," he uttered, though the lilt of sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable. The judge then shifted her focus to the determined prosecutor, who began to meticulously unravel the intricate case. The court was shown authentic body cam footage capturing Kane's interaction with a young man accused of petty theft. The video exposed an unnecessary spiral into unwarranted forcefulness, with Kane escalating immediately after the suspect neglected to obey his initial commands. As the footage concluded, a profound silence descended upon the courtroom. Judge Fowler's eyes returned to Kane, her demeanor unyielding. "Officer Kane, how do you account for your actions as shown in this video?" Kane sat up straighter, his unwavering confidence undimmed. "Your Honor, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes rapid decisions are necessary. When a suspect resists, I must act in the interest of public safety. Had I paused, someone might have been harmed." The judge arched a single eyebrow, declaring, "Someone could have been hurt, or indeed, someone already was, due to your actions." Kane opened his mouth to respond, but not a word came out. The gallery held its breath in tense anticipation for the judge's next move, while Kane stubbornly refused to yield. Judge Fowler reclined, her fixed gaze never leaving Kane, as an oppressive silence enveloped the room, the gravity of the moment bearing down on every soul present. She allowed the silence to linger just long enough for its weight to be palpably felt by all. "Officer Kane," she continued in a measured tone, "what you've just recounted amounts to a justification, not a genuine explanation, a crucial distinction. This court's task is not to assess your gut reactions but to determine if your instincts conform to the law and the oath you swore. Now, tell me once more, how do you account for the injuries inflicted upon the suspect?" Kane tensed visibly, unready for such a piercing inquiry. "Your Honor, I acted in accordance with my training." "Your training," he retorted. Judge Fowler interjected in a calm yet resolute tone, "Does your training instruct you to deploy escalating force before verifying noncompliance, or does it, perhaps, advocate de-escalation when a suspect poses no immediate danger?" The gallery observed with intent, their eyes flitting between Judge Fowler and the defiant officer, while Kane fidgeted uneasily in his seat. "I was gauging the situation in real time. It isn't always simply black and white," he asserted. Judge Fowler leaned forward, her tone descending into one that brooked no interruption. "No, Officer Kane, the world may not be simply black and white, but the law remains clear. Your badge does not grant you the liberty to blur these boundaries for convenience or arrogance." The silence in the room was so profound that even a whisper might have shattered it. Kane's smirk had vanished, supplanted by a grimace of frustration he could scarcely conceal. His hands fidgeted subtly, a stark departure from his previous swagger. Judge Fowler then gestured for the next evidence. The prosecutor introduced a series of witness statements, including one from a bystander who had captured the incident on their phone. This witness recounted the encounter as excessively aggressive, remarking that the suspect had seemed cooperative prior to being violently overpowered. As the statement was articulated, Kane's face reddened, his earlier composure visibly fracturing. His attorney leaned forward to murmur counsel, but Kane simply shook his head, adamantly refusing to yield. He shifted in his seat, every muscle taut with tension. Judge Fowler spoke once more, her tone imbued with gravity. "Officer Kane, you confront not merely an allegation but a profound question of integrity, whether the power bestowed upon you has been abused. Do you comprehend the weight of the responsibility that accompanies your badge?" Kane paused, his gaze locking with hers in a fleeting moment of reflection. Though his pride clung stubbornly like armor, he managed, "Yes, Your Honor, I understand." Her unyielding gaze never faltered. "I hope you truly grasp this. The actions captured in that footage betray not responsibility, but rather a profound misinterpretation of power." Yet, Kane stubbornly clung to his pride, unwilling to let it go so easily, as the tension in the room mounted and the air in the courtroom grew heavier. With deliberate grace, Judge Fowler motioned for the prosecutor to continue. The next exhibit was phone footage, captured from a slightly divergent angle compared to the body cam, which rendered an even sharper account of the episode. In it, the suspect, a wiry young man in his 20s, stood with raised hands, pleading desperately, as Kane forcefully seized him by the arm. The video revealed a rapid escalation, culminating in the suspect being hurled against a patrol car. A collective gasp surged through the gallery as the footage ended, and Judge Fowler's countenance grew stern, though her tone stayed unwavering. "Officer Kane, I have scrutinized both the body cam and this supplementary footage thoroughly. What I witness here is not a controlled encounter, but an unmistakable display of excessive force. Could you please elucidate this from your personal viewpoint?" Kane's once unyielding confidence began to crumble, his hands clenched into fists as he spoke. "Your Honor, in situations like these, unpredictability reigns, people deceive, and suspects may seem compliant one moment only to suddenly retaliate. I was safeguarding myself and others." Judge Fowler folded her hands on the bench, her serene demeanor sharply contrasting with Kane's mounting agitation. While protecting yourself and others is vital, the footage clearly shows a suspect who posed no immediate threat. Did you truly fear for your life at that moment, Officer Kane? Once more, silence enveloped the room as Kane hesitated, his expression a tumult of frustration and uncertainty. I wasn't about to take any chances, he stammered. Not taking risks is not equivalent to disregarding protocols. Judge Fowler replied with resolute firmness, your duty as an officer necessitates discernment rather than impulsive force. The badge you bear does not exonerate you from accountability. Kane began to retort, but before he could, a voice rang out from the gallery. He didn't have to do it, the guy was simply terrified. All eyes shifted toward the speaker, a middle-aged woman in the back row, whose tone, though not aggressive, brimmed with quiet conviction. I was there, I witnessed the entire episode. That young man wasn't resisting, he was pleading for him to stop. Kane's face flushed deep red as murmurs swept through the room. His attorney quickly rose and said, Your Honor, I request the court disregard any unsolicited comments from the gallery. Judge Fowler lifted her gavel but refrained from striking it. Instead, she fixed her gaze on the woman. Ma'am, while I appreciate your frustration, this court must maintain order. Please, no further comments. The woman nodded, her expression resolute yet deferential. The judge refocused on Kane. Officer Kane, this testimony, coupled with the footage, sketches a disquieting portrait. I will now afford you one final chance to elucidate your actions before we move forward. Kane's jaw clenched as his earlier bravado gave way to a markedly defensive tone. Your Honor, I acted as I believed best in the moment. Perhaps I might have managed it differently, but I do not repent prioritizing safety. Judge Fowler allowed his words to linger in the charged silence before replying, Safety is unquestionably vital, but not when it undermines fairness, protocol, or human dignity. Your actions betray a fundamental misapprehension of your solemn duty as a public servant. Kane's shoulders slumped ever so slightly, the full weight of her admonition settling in. He exchanged a glance with his attorney, who, though grim, offered no solace. The lesson Judge Fowler was poised to impart would permit no excuses. Judge Fowler leaned in slightly, her voice slicing through the silence like a sharpened blade. Officer Kane, serving as an enforcer of the law is a duty, not a license to wield unchecked power. What I witnessed today transcends a mere lapse in judgment, it is a profound failure to uphold the sacred oath you swore to honor. Kane shifted uneasily in his seat, his former bravado completely evaporated, leaving behind a young man visibly wrestling with the fallout of his deeds. The gallery observed with bated breath, the weight of the moment pressing relentlessly upon all. With unwavering resolve, the judge continued, This court is not a stage for your humiliation, Officer Kane, nor does it dismiss the intricate nature of your duties. Yet, it is abundantly clear that your approach betrays a perilous misinterpretation of power. Kane's head lowered slightly, and for the very first time, a trace of humility flickered across his face. His attorney gently rested a hand on his shoulder, but Kane remained unresponsive, as the gravity of his predicament slowly began to settle, clearly leaving him in internal turmoil. Judge Fowler then addressed the courtroom, declaring, Let this be a solemn reminder to all, accountability is not a sign of weakness. When authority is exercised without accountability, it veers into tyranny. We must all aspire to the highest standards, irrespective of our positions in society. The gallery sat in stunned silence as her words resonated deeply. It was not merely a rebuke of Kane's actions but a wider commentary on the responsibility inherent in power, an obligation binding every person in this room. Turning back to Kane, the judge's tone softened, Officer Kane, I am placing you on probation and mandating retraining in de-escalation techniques. Moreover, you will submit a formal apology to the individual involved. This is not simply a penalty, it is a chance to reflect and evolve. Do not squander it. Kane nodded slowly, his voice scarcely louder than a whisper, Yes, Your Honor, thank you. The gavel resounded once, marking the hearing's close. Slowly, the courtroom stirred as spectators exchanged soft murmurs while departing, yet the moment endured, a heady blend of relief, introspection, and the undeniable imprint of a hard-learned lesson. Judge Fowler remained seated, her eyes tracking Kane's exit from the courtroom. She perceived the inner turmoil etched on his face, the clash between pride and the dawning awareness of his errors. She hoped this lesson would resonate not only with him but with all who bore witness. For sometimes, humility marks the inaugural step toward genuine strength. As the courtroom emptied, the day's events lingered indelibly in the minds of all who had witnessed them. Officer Kane's arrogance, juxtaposed with Judge Fowler's steadfast composure and the incontrovertible force of accountability, vividly illustrated that justice transcends mere statutes and rules. It is fundamentally about respect, responsibility, and the fortitude to acknowledge one's mistakes. For Kane, the lesson was unequivocal: authority is not a tool for domination, but a means of service. In that single hearing, he was compelled to face his own ego and acknowledge the damage his actions inflicted, and for the judge, it stood as a testament to the power of leading with wisdom and grace, even amidst overt defiance. Such compelling narratives remind us that everyone, regardless of their station, faces a choice: to wield authority recklessly or to employ it as a means to forge lasting trust and foster fairness. Our defining moments often arise when we dare to learn, grow, and strive relentlessly for improvement. Justice isn't just about the decisions made in a courtroom, it's about the actions we take every day.